here to provide the first quarter fiscal update and economic statement for the 2022-23 year, followed by questions by media.
Well, good morning, everybody. Today, as Paul said, I'm pleased to present the Government of Alberta's 2022-23 first quarter fiscal update and economic statement. These positive results are a sign of positive momentum in Alberta's economy. Since Budget 2022, energy prices have risen sharply and are boosting activity in the oil and gas sector. Businesses are going ahead with investment plans despite rising costs, while the labour market continues to strengthen. Alberta's government is doubling down on investment attraction and economic growth. By making Alberta the most competitive jurisdiction in which to launch and grow a business, Alberta is attracting job creators who in turn create thousands of new careers. Alberta's government remains committed to stabilizing provincial finances so Albertans now and in the future continue to have access to public services and Alberta's generous social programs. That's why maintaining discipline in spending decisions now means so much for the future of this province's finances. While energy prices are high right now, Alberta needs to take this opportunity to strengthen provincial finances for the long term. At the beginning of the fiscal year on April 1st, the price of a barrel of West Texas Intermediate oil was just below $100 US. More recently, the price has sometimes dipped below $90, with an average price as of mid-August of $90.76 US dollars per barrel. Alberta's government plans on spending, investing, and saving wisely to better withstand potential economic downturns. And that's why Alberta's government will continue to move forward with our top priorities. By reducing the provincial debt, Alberta's government is taking the interest burden off of future generations. By investing in the Alberta Heritage Saving Trust Fund, Alberta's government is growing a source of financial strength to increase our ability to deal with the inevitable economic ups and downs. And by keeping more money in Albertans' pockets, Alberta's government is helping with the rising cost of day-to-day living and record high inflation. Total revenue from all sources is now expected to total $75.9 billion, which is $13.3 billion more than the initial estimates in Budget 2022. A large part of this is as a result of a considerable increase in revenue for non-renewable resources exceeding expectations as the global demand for oil continues to grow. The $28.4 billion in resource revenue, now forecasted for 2022-23, is the highest on record. We also continue to bring in more revenue from corporate income taxes as more businesses grow in nearly all sectors. On the expense side, total expenses is up marginally. The main changes include an increase of $578 million in energy, consisting of $300 million for the electricity rebates and another $277 million for the cost of selling oil due to the higher prices and volumes. Education is receiving an extra $52 million to support the new teachers agreement and to help school authorities pay for bus fuel. Justice and the Solicitor General expenses increased by $22 million for Crown prosecutor compensation and victims of crime programs. $279 million in the funding the province received from the federal government for the site rehabilitation program is being spent this year instead of next year, and $73 million in capital grants as some construction projects are moving forward this year instead of last. With this in play, we have adjusted forecasted expenses in 2022-23 to $62.7 billion, or $635 million higher than budgeted. As a result, instead of a modest $511 million surplus this year, we are now projecting a surplus of $13.2 billion, an improvement of $12.6 billion. This is still a projection, and I repeat, Alberta's government remains focused on reducing debt and saving for the future. Alberta's government is staying the course on sound fiscal management to strengthen the province's finances. By committing a record high investment in healthcare, including boosting intensive care beds and emergency medical services, more Albertans have access to surgeries and medical care they need. And initiatives like Alberta at Work continue to show results for businesses. Since the beginning of the year, more than 68,000 new jobs have been created in Alberta. As of July, we have the lowest unemployment rate since 2015 at 4.8%. So we remain focused on using this surplus wisely to benefit Albertans today and tomorrow, paying down debt and reducing the burden of debt each Albertan carries and building up our provincial savings funds. That means committing another $11.4 billion to pay down Alberta's debt in addition to $1.9 billion we've already paid down this fiscal year. That will bring taxpayer-supported debt, which is the provincial debt burden on Albertans, down to $79.8 billion. That's still a big number, and that's why we need to keep saving to support future generations. An investment of $2.9 billion in the Alberta Heritage Saving Trust Fund will grow the fund to its largest amount ever. As promised in 2019, Alberta is resuming the indexation of the personal income tax system now that the economic and fiscal conditions can support it. This will be retroactive to the start of 2022, meaning many people will get a larger refund or have to pay less tax when they file their taxes in 2022, for 2022 this spring. Most taxpayers will have lower taxes withheld on their paychecks than starting in 2023. With our strong economic situation, now is the time to once again help Albertans facing record high inflation and rising costs for food, gas, and day-to-day living. Resuming indexation will result in an increase to the basic personal amount to $19,814 for 2022, and it will rise again in 2023. As a result, an additional 80,000 to 95,000 Albertans won't have to pay any provincial tax at all. That's on top of the 1.3 million or so tax filers who already pay no taxes. This is helping the most vulnerable Albertans. On top of indexing personal income taxes, Alberta's government provides some of the most generous supports across the country to help Albertans and families. You're still saving 13 cents per litre every time you fill up your tank. Close to 2 million homes, farms, and small businesses are receiving $50 rebates each month on their electricity bills until at least the end of the year. Natural gas rebates are scheduled to kick in this October if prices remain high. Families with kids will save hundreds of dollars underneath the new child care agreement in our province. And by helping schools cover the high costs of fuel for buses, parents won't have to make up the difference with high transportation costs. I cannot emphasize enough how the choices we make today provide more opportunities for Albertans in the future. The Alberta government's continued commitment to three fundamental fiscal anchors is positioning the province for exceptional economic growth and expanded fiscal capacity. First, the government will continue to balance the budget, making sure we are not spending beyond our means, but really targeting our dollars to have the greatest impact. Second, we will continue to reduce our debt load, helping us to meet our commitments to keep Alberta's net debt well below 30% of its GDP. Our ratio will be about 10.3% by March 31st, 2023, well below most other provinces. And third, Alberta's government is successfully bringing our spending levels in line with other provinces. Alberta is no longer such an expensive outlier, paying far more to deliver government services. Instead, programs are sustainable and continue to provide top quality services. This long-term plan will keep our province as an economic leader in the nation and will stabilize provincial finances. I know many Albertans are worried about their bank accounts, and with so much of what we earn going towards higher cost for housing, food, and gas, inflation isn't unique to Alberta, and there is no simple solution that will drive down costs. But Alberta's government is making strong choices to make your life more affordable and to attract investment, growth, and new jobs to our province. We're holding the line on spending, borrowing less, and taxing less. Why? Because every Albertan deserves to enjoy security and prosperity and to be proud of the province as an economic driver and leader. Alberta's government will continue to find solutions and to build a strong, stable future for Alberta. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll be happy to take some questions.
Thank you. Reporters, please state your name and outlet, and we'll start with the floor with one question, one follow-up.
So, Catherine Grukowski, Alberta Today. Why not make the personal income tax reindexation retroactive to 2019? Why just for this year?
So we committed to Albertans that when we stabilize the fiscal situation in our province, that we would reindex. That has been a commitment that I made and my predecessor, then Minister Toews, made as well. The reality is, at the beginning of this mandate, that wasn't the situation. This government was facing an economic disaster that had been created by the former government, unprecedented amount of debt, significant job loss, and a structural deficit inside our budget that we committed to Albertans and campaigned on fixing. And then shortly after that, we also faced three once-in-a-century crises simultaneously in this mandate. And we committed to getting that fixed. We are now in a situation where the budget has stabilized. And so by bringing in reindexation at 2022, that fulfills that commitment to Albertans and makes the most sense long-term for Alberta's budget.
Well,
Yeah, you talked about the hardships of inflation and helping the most vulnerable Albertans. But one thing you're not doing today is re-indexing AISH. And I'm wondering, you're re-indexing personal income tax for people who make more than $300,000 a year, but you are not re-indexing AISH. And I'm wondering why.
I'm re-indexing personal income tax for everyone who pays in tax inside our province, not just people that pay over $300,000 or make over $300,000 a year, Kat. The reality is that the decision to re-index will save Albertans about $300 million in tax in 2022, and growing to, by 2024, almost $1 billion it will be saved by Alberta taxpayers. It will also remove about 85 to 95,000 more people from the Alberta tax rolls, and certainly those will be amongst our lowest income people inside this province, certainly from the tax code perspective. AISH and other social services programs remain critical to this government and something that we continue to invest in. When it comes to AISH, Alberta puts 37% more than comparable provinces into the AISH program, illustrating our strong commitment to AISH going forward. I don't anticipate that will change that commitment, and I think you'll continue to see that in future budgets. Strong investments inside of strong social services programs inside our province. We are tasked as the Department of Finance with bringing forward solutions that combat affordability issues, which are being primarily created at this moment by inflation. And this is why, as a government, we have focused on things like removing the fuel tax, which StatsCan in April indicated has had a significant impact on reducing Alberta inflation. Or our other programs, bringing in electricity rebates, and I would say that the natural gas rebate program should have similar impacts when it starts in October, which Trevor Tombe has indicated has likely lowered Alberta's inflation rate by up to 0.6%, which is a significant number. And so our focus continues to be on combating inflation and helping Albertans deal with affordability measures and trying to find levers that will actually deal with the inflation issue as best that we can inside the province. What we committed to in the last fiscal update was not to bring forward solutions that would make that inflation situation worse. And that's why you see within this presentation today and this announcement today a continued focus on measures that are making life more affordable for Albertans, but also combating inflation issues and not making them worse.
Brianna Karsten-Smith with Global Edmonton. In a follow-up to Catherine's question, you're dropping the GDP because consumer spending is expected to be lower because of inflation, like you spoke about. AISH recipients, seniors with health benefits, other income supports. These are people who can't afford groceries or electricity, let alone consumer spending. When, if $13.2 billion surplus is not the right time to reindex those benefits, when will you look at those again?
We are, again, the focus today is on measures that can impact inflation and have the quickest impact on Albertans facing affordability issues. You are in a situation in this province with about $2.7 billion worth of investments that have been announced already in the previous fiscal update or today to be able to help impact Albertans, particularly stuff along the lines of rebates on electricity bills, removing the fuel tax, which is having an impact on all of our society. Again, I will stress, one of the few things being shown to actually reduce inflation. But further that, it's also helping Albertans deal with affordability issues each and every day. The tax, the removal on fuel in particular, doesn't just have an impact on those of us who are filling up at the gas tank. By lowering the tax on fuel, we're lowering the cost of everything in our society. The reality is that food and all of the other things that we depend on come by truck, and that is having an impact across the system and is where our focus is at the moment. We continue to be committed to the most generous social services programs anywhere in the country. We will be. It's a high priority for our province. And as we go into the next fiscal budget, I know that the departments will be coming forward with ideas to improve those programs. But we will continue long-term to be committed to the most generous social service programs anywhere in the country.
Follow-up?
Well, so it's fair to say next budget you'll relook at it? Just yes or no, because I do have a follow-up question.
The departments will bring forward ideas in the budget process. The reality is when it comes to things like AISH right now, Alberta already pays 37% more than comparable provinces.
I do have a follow-up too, so that's good.
On our seniors side of things, we are amongst the highest for sure. We are creating enough flexibility within this to be able to adjust to changing circumstances. The last several months show how much things can change, and we will adjust as needed. But we will continue to be focused on investing in the future, paying down debt, and paying and investing in affordability items that don't make things worse when it comes to inflation.
Okay. When it comes to the next 6 weeks, we could see an entirely different finance minister, government
Right.
in place. Your decisions here today could be changed. We could see the next finance minister decide to give every Albertan $400 or something like that. I wonder how you personally feel about your hopes for this fiscal update potentially changing come budget time.
Well, the thing that I want to stress is every front runner in the leadership race for my party supports the principles that I'm outlining here. These principles also were passed by the majority of the members of the Alberta legislature in this past budget. While there may be some adjustments to ratios and those type of things as we go forward, the reality is that the United Conservative Party, who will remain the government on October 6th, is committed to these principles, which is investing in the future through things like the Heritage Saving Trust Fund, paying down debt, as you see significantly in this announcement today, and investing in affordability items that don't do more harm when it comes to inflation. So I'm very confident today that what we have laid out is supported by the majority of my party and certainly by the majority of the leadership candidates.
Hi, Carly Robinson with City News Edmonton. Back to the topic of AISH, I'm wondering if you can explain to Albertans with the dollar amount that it would have been to de-index for that overall budget, but also what that would have meant for that individual person and why we're not doing that. If you could just answer that to the person who is on AISH and is struggling to pay for groceries right now.
I don't have that dollar amount in front of me. I wish we could follow up with you and get that for you. What I will say to individuals in our province who are on AISH or other social services programs, Alberta continues to be committed to standing with those individuals, which is why we invest amongst the most, if not the most, inside our social services programs anywhere inside this country. At the same time, we're also committed as a province to be able to make sure that we combat inflation, don't make it worse. Our goal is not to bring forward affordability items that will make things worse for those individuals and for all Albertans. And so we are focused on rebates, removing taxes, these type of things who have been shown to make things affordable for Albertans, more affordable for Albertans right now, but also are lowering inflation and not making the core problem worse, which is creating the affordability crisis worldwide.
Follow up?
And we're seeing other provinces take different measures as we see our neighbors in Saskatchewan being cut checks, all citizens, or there's child care tax in Manitoba. Why not those items? Why these items?
Again, our commitment to Albertans was to go forward with items that would help with affordability, but not make the inflation situation worse. All of my officials and any economists that I have spoken to have indicated that going forward with payments like that would be counterproductive to that and could make the inflation issue worse. And so instead, we're focused on, again, removing the fuel tax, making sure that rebates are coming on electricity bills and on natural gas bills, which are being shown to make things more affordable for Albertans, save them money directly every month on their bills, but have the added benefit of lowering inflation inside our province. We will continue to do that, and we will adjust to what may need to take place inside the future. But our core principle will be to do no more harm, but instead try to help and make sure that we're not making things worse for the very people that we're trying to help.
Safe Kaiser, CTV News. Just following up on the question to previous there, wondering, it's easy for you to say that the other leadership candidates hold the same values, but we haven't heard from them that they would do half of the things that you're talking about doing here. So I guess I'm just wondering what the point of announcing these things are if, again, it can all just be changed or not done in a matter of 5 or 6 weeks.
Well, a couple things. First is that what we are moving forward with today has been passed by the Alberta legislature, by the majority of the MLAs and the elected people of the Alberta legislature who passed the last budget. And this is the fiscal plan that was outlined and how to handle surpluses within that budget. I'm not aware of a general election that's taking place between now and October 6th, and certainly I don't think that the principles that the majority members of the legislature supported a few months ago inside Budget 2022 will change. Further to that, I would disagree with you. I've been following leadership candidates closely. While they all have different ideas potentially on certain ratios or different programs that they may want to bring forward if they get a mandate from Albertans, the core principle of investing and paying down debt, investing in the future and things like the Heritage Saving Trust Fund, and strategically investing in affordability is supported by every leadership candidate as far as I'm aware.
Follow up.
Yeah, also just curious here, whether or not specifically to reindexing income taxes, does there need to be legislation passed in order for that to happen, or can you make that decision right now?
So ultimately, there will have to be some legislation passed long-term for the reindexation process. I would anticipate that that would go in this fall. But for 2022, the Department of Finance, myself, will be sending a letter to the federal government and to the CRA to make clear of our intention, which should be able to move us forward for 2022.
Now we'll go to the phones. Please state your name, outlet, and your question.
Aaron Collins, CBC.
Hey, thanks for taking my question. You're striking a very optimistic tone here, and rightfully so. I mean, a $13 billion surplus is nothing to shake a stick at. But watching last night's leadership debate, it's a stark contrast there. No talk of what to do with this windfall, and really a lot of negativity about the Alberta economy and the impact of the federal government on Alberta's economy. I'm just wondering how you rectify those two very different positions.
Well, again, I've been watching my colleagues who are running for the leadership of my party closely, as both a member of the party and as a current cabinet minister of the party that currently is forming government and an MLA of that party. And the principles that are outlined inside this announcement today are supported strongly by leadership candidates. I'm standing here today announcing over $13 billion in surplus, announcing the fact that under this government's leadership, all jobs have been restored since the NDP were government in 2015, announcing the largest corporate income tax rates that have come into the province in the history of the province, despite the fact that we've lowered the corporate income tax to be able to attract investment. In fact, I would say that's a proof point that why that policy worked. Announcing the largest natural resource revenues in the history of the province. Just a few short months ago and years ago, the federal government and other jurisdictions around the world were betting against our largest industry inside this province. This government and Albertans doubled down on defending the largest industry in this province and are seeing the benefits of that effort over the last several years. So I think there are lots of positive things inside this announcement, and I think that this province is headed in the right direction, and Albertans are very, very excited. I travel a lot, and I hear that from Albertans. At the same time, I'm also in this announcement indicating some caution. I can tell, you can tell by how big these numbers swing. The need for us as Conservatives to continue to bring forward policies that do not put the province back on the natural resource roller coaster. That's what we committed to Albertans to do in 2019. And with this announcement here today, we're fulfilling that commitment. Instead of going back to the bad fiscal spending habits of previous governments, we are focused again on investing in the future of Albertans, the largest amount ever invested in the Heritage Saving Trust Fund, and paying down debt, taking the debt that the NDP put us on a trajectory for of over $92 billion and lowering our debt to below $80 billion and setting up this province for future success. So I think there's lots of stuff to be positive about. And I think that Albertans are feeling that positivity. At the same time, we need to recognize the affordability challenges that are taking place across the world and in our province. And there's stuff in here that recognizes that and shows clear investments in trying to make life easier for Albertans now.
Follow-up question?
Yeah, I think I just want to follow up a little bit. I mean, clearly you're optimistic, and these numbers would make it kind of odd not to be, which is why I think it's so glaring that there's such little optimism from the folks that want to lead your party. And I'm wondering if you think or if you worry that it could be dangerous or counterproductive for the UCP, for your party, for this government to sort of push that narrative that Alberta is some kind of a victim in Confederation when we're by far the richest province in Canada and doing so well. Is there a potential for blowback there?
Well, you're talking about two different issues. I know, and I've heard lots of my colleagues who are running for leader talk about the strong fiscal position that Alberta's in and the opportunities that come from that. I don't see lots of negativity coming from the leadership race on that issue. I would disagree with you. What I think you're referring to is candidates talking about concerns about the ongoing frustrations between this province in particular, but provincial governments in general, and the federal government. Those are different issues, and we need to continue to stand up for this province. And case in point is this announcement. The federal government of this country has been betting against the oil and gas industry for the last several years and have told us at times that it was going to be the end of the oil and gas industry. The current Prime Minister said that the oil sands at some point would have to be phased out. Today's announcement, today's numbers show that the federal government is wrong and that Alberta's government was right to continue to stand with the largest industry, not only in this province, but in this country, the largest employer, not only in this province, but in this country, and the benefits that come from this industry. And this province, no matter who is the leader of my party, will continue to stand up to Canada, to the federal government when needed, to be able to defend this province's rights and to develop our resources. Those are different issues than being optimistic about our economic future. I'm announcing today an over $13 billion surplus, the largest investments in the Heritage Saving Trust Fund in our history, paying down all of our short-term debt this year and putting aside money for future debt payments, probably amongst the highest debt repayments in the history of this province. There are a lot of things to be optimistic about, but just because we're optimistic doesn't mean we're going to stop standing up for this province against the federal government.
Operator, please put through the next caller.
Kelly Kreiderman, Globe and Mail. Hi there. Following up on that question, I'm wondering about the negotiations that we presume will take place in the lead up to 2024 for a new equalization formula. Do you think that the money that is flowing into Alberta at this moment, do you think that weakens the argument that Alberta and other provinces might have about the formula being changed?
Well, I think that certainly it will probably cause other provinces to not want to see the formula changed. As you see numbers like this, I still think that the position of the Alberta government is that the equalization formula in its current context is broken, and that there needs to be a conversation about that. That certainly is going to require a leadership election to be completed here in the next 6 weeks, and then that direction to be laid out by the next Premier of Alberta. But what I can tell you with confidence is that the United Conservative Party, as long as we are in government, won't do what the NDP did, which is remain silent when the equalization formula is being rejigged or renegotiated. We'll be active participants at the table and doing everything that we can. My personal view is that resource revenue should be removed from the formula, but certainly we will be a strong voice at the table. And unlike the previous government, we won't sit back silently while the formula is rejigged.
Follow-up question.
And following on that, will Alberta be following through with any discussion about changing the formula for fiscal stabilization?
Well, I haven't had conversations about that of late with officials. But what I can say is that we will remain fully committed to getting as much of Albertans' money back into this province. That's what this government has focused on tirelessly over the last several years. And that will continue to be a commitment, certainly while I'm still finance minister. And I am very confident that whoever's the leader of my party will continue to fight to get as much of Albertans' money back into this province and to make sure that we're getting a fair deal within Confederation.
Operator, please put through the next caller.
Mayor Nally, Ann Chen, CBC.
Hi, just had a question as to what is the threshold or criteria for possible de-indexing in the future?
Well, we're announcing today that we're de-indexing the tax system, the personal income tax system. I assume by that question you're referring to other social services programs.
Yes.
Again, we will, departments that manage those social services programs will continue to bring forward their budget submissions to Treasury Board, and we will continue to manage the budget underneath the principles that we have outlined, which is taking our spending and making sure our spending stays in line with other provinces. We remain very committed to having the best and the most well-funded social services programs anywhere in the country. And things like AISH, which is a very common topic when you're talking about re-indexing the social services program at this moment, are about 37% higher than other provinces. We'll continue to evaluate that, but with a strong commitment to be able to make sure that Alberta has the most well-invested in social services programs anywhere in the country.
Follow-up question.
Yesterday, Premier Kenney in his video noted that investments would be targeted toward healthcare and the criminal justice system. I'm wondering if you could elaborate on what investments they may look like.
Well, the government as a whole, this government for the last 3 years has made record amounts of investments in the healthcare system, the highest healthcare budgets each and every year of the last 3 years of this mandate. And the budget that we're currently in still remains the highest investment, the highest budget amount in healthcare in the history of the province. You've seen the health minister announce other initiatives as well, and I would encourage you to to ask Minister Copping some more specifics of those announcements. But things like the surgical initiatives that we're focused on right now, and other investments that you're going to see coming from health and have seen over the last several months will continue forward. The key message from a financial perspective is that Alberta will continue to invest the largest amount inside healthcare in the history of the province.
Operator, please put through the next caller.
Graham Thompson, Toronto Star.
Hi, Minister. It's wondering, going back to the leadership race, Travis Tape, your predecessor, is not committing to run again until he sees the outcome of the actual race. Do you, as a minister, as an MLA, commit to running again no matter who wins the race in October?
My job, first and foremost, my most important job outside of being a dad and a husband, is to be the MLA for Rimbey Rocky Mount House Sundre. I've had the privilege of being elected by that community multiple times. They've nominated me to run for my party in the next election, and I will run to serve the people of Rimbey Rocky Mount House Sundre in 2023, no matter what comes. And I will continue to be the strongest voice that I can for the people that send me here every Sunday night.
Follow-up question?
And, yeah, just quickly, what happens if somebody wins the leadership race with whom you disagree? I know that you've made some comments, for example, about the Alberta Sovereignty Act, saying that that just wouldn't get through the legislature. What happens if somebody wins the race, not naming names here, who will push for an Alberta Sovereignty Act? What do you do as an MLA and a minister?
First of all, I haven't commented on the Alberta Sovereignty Act specifically. I haven't seen the act. I don't comment, as you know, Graham, on legislation I've never seen. I can't provide an opinion on how I would vote or what the chances of a potential bill that I've never seen would be inside the Alberta legislature. What I have said is that in response to a question of whether or not the Alberta legislature can pass a bill that is illegal, and certainly the answer to that question, if there's an illegal bill, the Alberta legislature would not pass it, and I would imagine Her Honour would not sign it. But I can't comment on a bill I haven't seen. And I will evaluate any legislation I see as an MLA the same way I do with every bill, and make a decision what's best for my constituents and how I will respond for them. As for if somebody's elected I would disagree with, look, the current Premier of Alberta I've disagreed with at times. The reality is that our system of democracy is set up that a team, a party comes and tries to form government together and or the opposition. And we work together as a team. It's a team sport. But certainly around the caucus table, there's often disagreements. And if there is somebody who's elected leader of the party who I have disagreements with, I will continue to be a strong voice around that caucus table. And we'll stand up for the people of Rimbey Rocky Mount House Sundre as they've elected me to do.
Operator, please put through the next caller.
Michelle Bellefontaine, CBC.
Hi, Minister. I wanted to ask you about the legislation to amend the Heritage Savings Fund Trust Fund Act. So the fiscal update says it'll allow the $1.2 billion to be retained. Can you tell me a little bit about what happens right now and why this legislation will be required?
So in the old legislation, the amount that would be retained automatically inside the Heritage Saving Trust Fund would be the amount to inflation-proof the fund. And that happens automatically. The rest of the earnings from the Heritage Saving Trust Fund must come out in general revenue, and if they're being reinvested, then sent right back into the Heritage Saving Trust Fund. And so we will be bringing forward legislation in the fall to change it so that you don't have to, if you're making an investment inside the Heritage Saving Trust Fund beyond inflation proofing, that you don't have to make that transfer to general revenue and then transfer it back in.
Follow-up question?
Do you have any sense of why the legislation was written that way originally? I know we're sort of going back in time here.
No, I don't. I don't think I was alive, Mr.
Thanks.
All right. Operator, please put through the next caller.
Harry Tate, Globe and Mail.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking my question. I have, I'm curious when you talk about discussions of re-indexing around AISH and other benefits, you talk about how that will have to come up in the next round of budget submissions. I'm wondering why that applies to the next round of budget submissions, but something like re-indexing the income tax does not.
Again, there's been a strong commitment by this government that when we found ourselves in a spot where we were in surplus and have stabilized Alberta's fiscal situation, that we would re-index the personal income tax system. Me standing here today telling you that we have over a $13 billion surplus forecasted certainly shows that our budget situation has stabilized, and we are fulfilling that commitment to Albertans to re-index the tax system. Again, we remain utterly committed to having the strongest social services programs. And AISH is extremely important to Albertans, and particularly to the Albertans that are on AISH, which is why we remain committed to funding AISH 37% higher than any comparable province.
Follow-up question?
Yes, sorry, you had mentioned again something, those types of things would come up in budget submissions the next time around. I'm wondering if they have come up in budget submissions in the past round.
I wasn't around the Treasury Board table for the last budget, so can't speak to it, plus wouldn't be allowed to tell you what was deliberated around the Treasury Board table. What I can tell you is that we remain committed to having well-funded social services programs, but as well committed to being able to make sure on behalf of Albertans that we don't fall into the bad habits of previous, frankly, conservative governments who found themselves in spots of surplus like we do now, which then created budget situations where we were paying 15, 20% more for comparable or for less services than other provinces.
Okay, seeing no other questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Oh, Kat's got one more.
I have one more.
Okay.
Talk about the legislation. So obviously this windfall is caused partly by the Russia's invasion of Ukraine, kind of a once-in-a-lifetime event. Can you speak about the philosophy behind having a bill that would allow more savings, and what's your long-term vision of the Heritage Trust Fund?
Well, you're right. I mean, some of the natural resource situation that we have seen take place, I would say almost all of it is out of the direct control of Alberta. And certainly, I don't think any of us 2 years ago would have predicted that we'd be watching a ground war in Europe. And that has had an impact on the situation. This is why our government in Budget 2022 laid out a plan on how we would handle surpluses. We anticipated at some point we would be in surpluses. We obviously worked hard to get the budget balanced. We're probably a little bit earlier than we anticipated because of what has taken place globally, but we knew that we would get here one day. And so that is what we passed inside the budget. That's what we debated in the legislature and through the budget process was what we would do. And that's what's in this announcement, which is a focus on paying down debt. And I would submit to you, Kat, that you don't have a balanced budget as long as you have almost $100 billion in debt from my perspective. And certainly our province and constituents I talk to and Albertans I talk to want us to take debt seriously and make sure that we're not leaving a burden on future generations. At the same time, we have long talked about putting investment away inside the Heritage Saving Trust Fund when you're in periods of windfall, and that's what we're in. So what the difference in philosophy that you're seeing right now is a commitment to fulfill that, not to take that money and then use it to pay for more for services than other provinces are paying for, but instead put it into the Heritage Saving Trust Fund and make sure that it's there to benefit us now, or even in the next fiscal year. You're going to see returns as a result of this investment, but also be able to benefit future generations of Albertans because of these resource windfalls.
And is this strictly enabling, optional? I know Rebecca Schultz, for instance, has talked about very specific targets of 30% investment in savings. Have those details been?
Again, I mean, this is the core principles are supported by